Here's every card so far that was removed in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, and also every hero that is now gone from the game. Let's take a look and let's talk about them. The first one is Direwolf Alpha, which was just a card that was very popular in Standard and they kind of just brought over in Battlegrounds, but turns out it's really bad. It doesn't really see that much play and it's just kind of boring, so they took it out. We also have Dragon Spawn, which was actually in the game for quite a while, but it's also just bad. It's a 2-3 taunt on tier 1 and it does nothing in the mid-late game, so for obvious reasons people never kept this around for too long. Fiendish Servant also was in the game for really long. It was a demon that also kind of like enabled some sort of composition where you just give super high attack to the rest of your board, but instead they replaced this with Trickster, which actually now gives health to different cards, which is a lot better. So they kind of just improved this minion and replaced it. Mekharu was a mech on tier 1 that was mainly played just as a reset for the Flectobot or as a token card in case you do need like summons, but it was a really bad mech. Micro Machine, actually a card that I'm most sad about leaving because it was a 1-2 but it gained +1 attack, so it was really good with Pyramid where you have a Micro Machine, you just buff the health, the attacks get buffed up. It was kind of fun to play with. It's not great, but I have some fond memories of this card. We also have Murloc Tidecaller, which is I think pretty recently removed, which was just kind of a staple in Murlocs because you get the attack pretty high and with all of the health buffs it's just a big boy. And then also Murloc Tidehunter, which has been in the game since forever, only recently got removed as well because it was just one of the strongest tokens. It allowed Gendis to be really strong and token triples and Shadow Walk, and it just gave too many problems, so this card had to be removed. Then we have Righteous Protector, which was just a too strong card on tier 1 because it was a Divine Shield, which tempo meta was really good, Katuna was really good, so just being able to buff up Divine Shields early was amazing, even though we kind of have a new Divine Shield on tier 1 now with Pubbot, so the reasoning why they took it out and just put something better in is a little bit questionable. Voidwalker was another demon on tier 1 that got replaced because it's just a 1-3 taunt and it doesn't really see much play because why would you need this? Vulgar Homunculus was a pretty interesting one because it's the only card that actually deals damage directly to your face when you play it, so you took 2 damage, kind of like the standard card. A lot of these early cards that you will see in Battlegrounds were actually just standard cards that they implemented because they didn't have many like Battleground specific cards, so then they slowly rotated those out and designed like specific cards for this game mode. Moving on to 2-drops, we have Shielded Minibot, which was just a pretty strong card because it's a Divine Shield mech on tier 2, so you would play this, you could buff this with Leapers already, and they're really strong. Even if they would be in the game right now, they would be pretty strong. Annoyotron, same deal, it's another Divine Shield mech on tier 2. Now the stat line is a little bit worse, but it also has taunt, and if you roll an arm, like you have a really good taunt coming along. Arcane Cannon, this is gonna bring some PTSD back for some people because this was super toxic. It luckily didn't stay in the game for too long because a lot of people were complaining. Basically it turned every fight into an RNG fest. Whoever attacks first with this cannon triggering and sniping the other cannon just wins. It was also the very first card introduced in Battlegrounds, I think, that can't attack, so it just stays on your board, can't attack yourself, and you wanted to play like Scallywags next to it, and whenever something attacks it deals 2 damage. Defiant Shipwright was one of the worst cards I think we've ever seen in the game, and for that reason it also got removed very quickly. It was a neutral 2-drop that whenever you level up you get a random pirate in Bob's Tavern, which I don't know what the hell they were thinking, like what is like good about it, but I guess it's a 3-4 on tier 2. Kindly Grandmother was a beast that actually stayed around in the game for quite a bit as well. It was a 1-1 that summons a 3-2 and it had a lot of synergies with like beasts like Hyena and Pack Leader that we'll see in a little bit. It was just like decent for early synergy, kind of if you have Mama Bear later on it could also be pretty great, but a bit boring, so eventually they rotated this out. Mounted Raptor is actually a very old school card that was removed very early on because it's a 3-2 beast that summons a random 1-cost minion. They actually took out a lot of cards that summon random cards early on because they're pretty toxic. This wasn't that strong or that like oppressive. It was just kind of a filler card that no one really played that much with. Old Murkai is another Murloc on tier 2 that was removed just to make place for the new Murlocs that we got added recently. Pack Leader was a staple in early beast comps and a lot of it revolved around just, you know, summoning beasts on your board, have with death rattles like the Kindly Grandmother that we saw, and giving everything +2 attacks. Now we have Bird Buddy, which is kind of just a way stronger version. So yeah, that's how old school beasts used to play. Pogo Hopper, this card has a soft spot in my heart and always will have. It was kind of fun to play with, it's a bit high rolly, but just Gendis is the one hero that completely broke this card, and I guess old Shadowwalk or old Brand could use this pretty decently as well, but other than that this card didn't see that much play. It wasn't great, it was more of a meme, but I have a lot of beautiful screenshots of pogo boards back in the day. Steward of Time was again one of those filler dragons. Whenever you sold it, it would buff your shop. It used to be +1/+1. It got buffed to +2/+1, which made it a bit better. I think it was actually a really interesting card and I liked it. Like, it's not that strong when you pick it up, but when you sell it, you actually buff your shop and you could translate that into tempo. So I'm kind of sad to see this card gone. I think it allowed for a really cool playstyle. Tormented Ritualist was a really good tempo 2 drop. Like, it's a neutral taunt, so it doesn't stay around or scale much. Maybe with arm comp it sticked around for a little bit, but whenever it got attacked into, it buffed adjacent minions +1/+1. That was good enough to justify picking it just to be strong. Wax Rider Togwaggle. This is a very bad card because most of the time it didn't get much value and it was just a 1/2 or a 1/3 because it got buffed later. But whenever a friendly dragon kills an enemy, game +2/+2, if you could snowball this and actually have a strong dragon board, this could allow you to level very aggressively to tier 5 and 6 and then find Caligos or Nadina and scale up your board. Zubot was a menagerie buff, was a 2-star 3/3 mech, so as a mech you could also module onto it and actually make it part of your composition. And it basically just gave a random beast, dragon and murloc +1/+1. So back in the day it was only like 3 tribes that you could buff with this, so menagerie was like kind of forced into what you would have to take. While this got replaced with the mug, which just buffs 3 random tribes and it could be whatever, so it's a bit more flexible. Arcane Assistant was a pretty good elemental buff. It just gave everything +1/+1 on your board. It was kind of basic, but it was pretty good. Baron's Blacksmith, one of the most toxic cards in the game as well. Frenzy is whenever it takes damage and doesn't die, it would give your minions +2/+2, so kind of like a spawn on steroids. This was just a win more card. If you play this, it's like, does it value trade or not? If it does, you're super strong, you win the fight, did a lot of damage, and you can level. So this card had to be removed very quickly. Bloodseal Cannoneer was an attack buff for pirates. It was a 4/3 that gives +3 attack to every other pirate on your board. But pirates didn't necessarily need this, and there were way more interesting things that they instead put in for the tribe. Cobalt Guardian, this was the old Deflectobot. I'm not quite sure why they replaced this with Deflectobot. This was a 6/3 that actually didn't start with Divine Shield. You first had to play a mech and then it would gain Divine Shield. And then it works the same as Deflectobot. Whenever something dies on your board that is a mech with Death Rattle and you summon a new mech, then it would regain Divine Shield. It doesn't get the attack buffs though, like Deflectobot, so I'm not quite sure again why this was replaced. This video is taking a long time to create, so if you're enjoying it so far, a like would be very much appreciated. Or if you're part of the 60% that is not yet subscribed to the channel, consider clicking that button if you want to catch more content like this. Crowd Favorite. This was a really fun minion to play with. It's a neutral, but whenever you play any battle cry, it gets +1/+1. So you could just play a pair of this on the board and just play random buffs, and then this would scale up with the other cards on your board. Crystal Weaver is a neutral demon buff. It was a 5/4 on tier 3, so it had a pretty good stat line. You often could just take this for tempo, but it's like a filler card. You don't really scale up demons with this, so this was removed to make place for some actually more interesting cards as well. Hangry Dragon. This was a very interesting pick because if you win your fights, then you would get +2/+2 for free. So you would see people pick Hangry Dragons early and then hope that they win their fights if they have a good matchup, for example, and then these would just snowball and keep on getting +2/+2 for free. But if you lost your fights, then you were stuck with this card, and they call it the Hangry Curse. So you had these on your board, you would never win fights, and these would just be stuck being 4/4s, and then you die. So there was high risk, high reward, which I really liked, but sadly enough, it fell off a bit much, and they wanted to make room for different cards. Imp Gang Boss was a 2/4 demon that summoned a 1/1 imp whenever it took damage, so it fit really well into a juggler comp or in any comp that wants tokens to be summoned. You do need the board space for it though. It was kind of whatever. It was just like a random demon. Infested Wolf was another just random Death Rattle beast on tier 3 that summons 2 1/1 spiders. Again, really good with the back leader synergies and with all the other early game beasts, maybe with Mama Bear, but I guess this card wasn't that interesting. Iron Sensei, I actually really enjoyed this card. I think it was super fun to play one. It's only a 2/2 and it gives you a +2/+2 to random friendly mech at the end of your turn. So it's not that much, but if you could just find a pair on this and they were scaling each other up, or you have a Deflectobot or a Cobalt in this case and just start scaling that with Senseis, it was really fun to play with. Just have like some mini Light Fang passive scaling on your board. Phalanx Commander was a neutral 4/5 that would give your taunt minions +2 attack. This was bad. Like, why would you play with this? It didn't really make that much sense, so eventually this card was just removed from the game. Piloted Shredder was one of those cards again that summoned a random 2-cost minion on Death Rattle, which is kind of a mechanic they wanted to move away from. All the randomness turned out to be annoying, but this was part of compositions. It could summon a ghoul. I just vividly remember when it summons ghouls and it just screws you over because you have your own like divine shields on the board. Other than that, yeah, you actually didn't even want to play this card most of the time. Psychotron is another divine shield mech that was removed on tier 3. So mechs had a bunch of early divine shields, making them pretty strong and actually one of the best tribes early on in Battlegrounds. It was good. Shifter Xerath. This card is a big meme. You just find this card and would every turn transition into a random card in your hand. So this could be a 6-drop or a 1-drop. I remember when playing AFK, you would get a 3-drops or 2 3-drops, and you could get double Shifter Xeraths, and then you were just hoping that the Shifter Xerath transforms into something really good. And I think I still have screenshots of just getting like crazy high roll cards from this, but it was super toxic. Obviously this card wasn't here to stay. The Beast was a 9/7 on tier 3, the biggest stat line we've ever seen, but the Death Rattle summoned a 3/3 for your opponent. So if this value traded and it survived, that you were fine, but if it died, it would summon a 3/3. So it's kind of again like high risk, high reward. You get bit tempo, but you need to win the fight, otherwise you're a bit screwed. I think this was interesting to play with, but again, it doesn't usually become part of any composition. Tortollan Shellraiser was just a 2/6 neutral taunt that gave a random friendly minion +1/+1 on death. Not that great, but yeah, it's again just a kind of a filler. Now moving on to 4-drops, we got Bolvar, which has been in the game for a while and was a good card. It's whenever a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, it gains +2 attack. This would just become a really good tempo unit if you have a board full of Divine Shields, and very often you would have that. You could even Argus it up, taunt it, and then it could become part of your composition. Even though it's a neutral, that didn't really matter that much back in the day. Then Champion of Reshiram, I think is the most like interesting card that they removed yet, because it single-handedly allowed for like taunt comp to be able to have something to scale. It's a neutral and just a big stat pile, so it does lose to other effects, but it's passive scaling. I liked it. I think it enabled a composition that we sadly don't see much anymore, and I think we need more like actually good playable neutral compositions right now. But yeah, they removed it, and we'll see where they're going with this next. Festerwood Hulk. This is an old card that a lot of you probably don't remember because it was also really bad, but it was a 2/7 neutral on tier 4. After if any minion attacks, it would gain +1 attack. So you would have to play a bunch of tokenish cards, and then eventually this got up to like, what, 10 attack? So this was really, really bad. This was shit. But again, if you power level and you just find a pair on this could carry you for a little bit. Floating Watcher. This card was a staple in Demons. It used to be a 3-drop as well, then got nerfed to a 4. It's basically whenever your hero takes damage, it would gain +2/+2. So this worked with the Homunculus, but especially with Weavers. If you have a Ref Weaver and you play a demon, this would also just scale up. And this was a demon on itself, so it kind of was a better Weaver. This really allowed the demon meta to shine and for like big demons to be really strong and kind of oppressive, but eventually they decided to remove this card. Herald of Flame was a dragon that on overkill dealt 3 damage to the leftmost minion, so it could kind of chain. If your opponent has a lot of very small low HP cards, it could just kill a card, then it would chain to the next card. But again, it's a card with like very low applications. It's not that amazing. Haxorus Marauder was a super interesting card that I was also very sad to see leave, because it allowed for power leveling to be worth it. If you went to tier 4 and you hit this, you basically have to play down a unit, so you need to have 6 or fewer minions, and then it would gain +3/+3 passively. I felt like this was like a really well designed payoff card, so I'm not quite sure why they removed it. I didn't feel like it was too oppressive. Maybe one day we'll see him make a return. Jungbot is the king of old school Battlegrounds. Every composition was a Jungbot comp, and the one with the most Jungbots won. So max, like I mentioned, was really good. You didn't really need scaling. All you needed was as many max as possible and death rattles and menaces, and then as good combat RNG as possible to get like good cobalt value with your divine shields. It actually stayed around in the game for quite a bit, got nerfed to tier 5, then back to 4, but now Jungbot comps are just no longer a thing, and clearly the game is going into a bit of a different direction with just more actual scaling. Menagerie Magician is one of those menagerie cards that was reworked. So this was a neutral 4/4 that gave only a beast, dragon, and murloc +2/+2. So you were really forced to play menagerie with those 3 tribes. This was later replaced with Jug, which once again just buffs 3 random tribes on your board. Piloted Sky Golem is a tier 4 6/4. It was a mech that again just summoned a random 4-cost minion, and as we see before, they were not a big fan of just summoning a random card on your board. On lower tiers at least. I mean, we still have Ghastcoiler, but it was more of a filler card again. But a good tempo card nonetheless. Kiraji Harbinger is another card that single-handedly enabled an entire new composition to flourish. Taunt comp was actually really good. You would play a lot of random taunts on your board. Even the 1-drop Reborns were so good here. It's so much stats. I actually kind of missed this meta, even though it was kind of a lot of bullshit. Whoever had Kiraji and a bunch of taunts wins. It just allowed that if you don't high roll, you can still save your ranks. So I'm sad to see this go. I'm sad to see taunt comp now be in a worse spot than it used to be, but maybe they change their mind in the future. And Security Rover, the 2/6 mech that summoned 2/3 mechs with taunt whenever it took damage, was another great addition to Kirashi comp. You could just module this, it would summon multiple taunts, it would value trades, and then just gets you a lot more buffs. So this card was actually really fun to play with. Again, with Jungbot, it has good synergies. It had a lot of good synergies with the removed cards and what the meta used to be. So sad to see this go as well. I feel like this card wasn't that toxic to play against. Siegebreaker was a tier 4 5/8 demon taunt that gave your other demons +1 attack, which honestly doesn't matter. Yeah, like you don't care about the +1 attack, especially since it has taunt itself, so it will die early. Boogie Monster, another old school card that was a 6/7 neutral. Whenever it attacks and kills something, it would gain +2/+2. So because it's a neutral, you couldn't really skill this up, meaning it's really bad, just like the Festerroot Hulk. It would fall off quickly, it would not be able to trade with anything. Tuxfin is the Murloc that gave poison to friendly minions. This was in the game for so long, and well, recently they removed it and replaced it with Sephin to kind of go into a different direction with poison. Whether this is healthier than Sephin is, I guess, a hot topic to discuss, but this card did have a huge impact on the game. Vermin Sensei was a beast buff. We actually don't have any right now except for Hauntmaster, which gives taunt as well on tier 3, but this would give +2/+2 to any beast. It is a neutral 4-drop though, so it's not that easy to find and you can really keep it on the board. Whirlwind Tempest was a 6/6 elemental with a very unique effect that gave your Windfury minions Mega Windfury, and this was really strong. This was actually kind of oppressive because if you could lead with any sort of massive Mega Windfury cards early on, you could just wipe out your entire opponent's board before they got a chance. So this was fairly quickly removed. Deadly Spoiler was a 1/1 neutral that just had poison, which was now replaced by Leroy. This was just a fill card. Like again, if you just have spots on the board where you don't know what to play, you just play this because it's good. It did have a reasonable impact on the game, so seeing it replaced with something else did change up the meta a little bit. Faceless Tavengor is a card a lot of people actually enjoyed. It was another neutral 4/4, but that doesn't matter because if you play it, you could just choose a minion in Bob's Tavern and you could become a copy of it. So you could get instantly any pair on the board. Also, when this card was in the game, you would see a lot more crazy high roll builds on tier 5 and 6 because it was so much easier to find pairs and triples on higher tier cards. Ironhide Direhorn was a tempo card on tier 5 for beasts. It summoned a 5/5 whenever it overkilled something, so it would have to trade into something then overkill it as well for it to get value. While right now we have Baby Crush, which is just a way better version. All it needs to do is only attack and it already summons something that will attack for you. Mal'Ganis basically gave you immunity against damage, which is kind of what you needed when you were playing Wrath Reavers. Even though it did disable Floating Watcher, it was just like a big tempo spike as well, and this was actually replaced by a 3-drop, so they moved Mal'Ganis kind of to tier 3 to make you immune. Nat Pagel was an 8/5. At first it would summon a chest, so if it attacked and overkilled something, it would summon a random chest, and then if that chest died on your board, it would summon a random golden card. I think there's still a clip somewhere of me facing a Pagel that summons a chest, summons a golden boat, and then I died to a golden boat, and I think I just like lost my mind. But that got changed, and then that Pagel just gave you a random minion in your hand whenever it overkilled, so it became more of a value machine. It was a pirate that could generate you 1 or multiple cards a turn, sometimes 0. Also a really fun target for a Reno hero power. Sated Trashadon was a tier 5 5/7. This card was weird. It was a beast that on Death summoned 3 Murlocs, so for obvious reasons this saw very little to no play. It just had no synergy with anything. It was a very strange card in Battlegrounds. Seabreaker Goliath was a win-free 6/7 pirate that on overkill gave your pirates +2/+2. So if you triple into this, you would spike super hard. It would go first, hopefully kill some stuff, and then just buff your entire pirate board with +2/+2. So even a stronger Eliza. Sneed's Old Shredder was a tier 5 5/7 mech that summoned a random legendary. Again, a card that summoned a random card. It was just toxic. But I remember Death Rattle builds with Baron, Kangors, and Sneed, and then you just like pray to the gods that you get some good summons. Stormscale Siren is one of the latest cards removed because it just, I think it's fresh on everyone's mind. It just made Nagas way too oppressive and way too strong. They did mention they might bring it back soon with some changes though. Amalgadon, one of the other cards that recently got removed that was just insanely strong and oppressive. It was part of every endgame composition. This card single-handedly turned every endgame board into the endgame board that it was. So seeing this removed from the game did change change how it is played quite a bit, or at least the end game. Archud Hamul was a 4/4 neutral on tier 6 that would, on playing it, refresh the entire tavern with minions from your most common type on the board. So let's say you have mostly Murlocs on your board, it would summon a bunch of Murlocs in Bob's Tavern. But it also was exploitable if you have a tribe on your board. Let's say you have a Pumbaa on your board, which is a beast, but there were no beasts in the lobby. The only beast it could summon in your shop then on tier 6 were Amalgadons, so you could get full shops of Amalgadons. So they decided to remove this card instead. Captain Flattusk was the Quillboar on tier 6 that gives you a blood gem whenever you spend 4 gold. It used to be 3 gold, just removed with a different Quillboar that kind of works in a similar fashion whenever you spend gold. But because I think of the introduction of Naga, this would be a little bit too strong because blood gems do have synergy with Naga because they're technically spells. Elisra the Immortal, another card that was super toxic and had to be removed because it just was a pain in the ass to play against. It was a Divine Shield Reborn 4/4 neutral that whenever a taunt was attacked into, that would get attacked instead. So you could literally protect your board from at least 4 hits. So you would have to position super awkwardly. It was just not a fun or great addition to the game, so that's why it got removed. Friend of a Friend. This card was stupid. It was a 5/6 neutral on tier 6 that would just discover a buddy on Battlecry, and this would lead to people finding brands, playing this, and just getting all of the most broken buddies in the game, snowballing, having literally no time to finish your turn because there's so much money and so many buddies that give you money as well. It was disgusting, so obviously the card got removed pretty quickly. Gentle Megastar, another card that will trigger some PTSD, was a tier 6 5/4 beast that adapted all of your Murlocs on Battlecry, so again with Bran, pretty good. And then you would have your classic full poison Divine Shield Murloc boards that would be just game winning back in the day. Holy Mackerel, I think probably the worst card to have ever existed. A 8/4 Murloc that whenever another friendly minion loses Divine Shield, it would regain Divine Shield. So if you have your full board of poison Divine Shield Murlocs and one of the Divine Shield pops, this would regain it. Also, you could poison this, so this is a poison Divine Shield that could regain Divine Shield. Gar was an 8/8 elemental on tier 6. It used to be an 8/1 and then a 5/1. It changed around quite a bit as well. It was a taunt that got extra health whenever you played an elemental equal to the amount of elementals you had on your board. This got removed because it snowballed way too much with Lil Reg and with Genie on tier 6. It's too much stats. It would just become unbeatable very, very quickly. Maexna was another staple in the game, a 2/8 poison beast, meaning it could be reborn, and reborn poison is kinda annoying to face, so because of that reason I think they removed Maexna. Seafood Slinger was a 5/5 neutral on tier 6 that would just make a random Murloc golden, so you could just cycle a golden Murloc from your shop, a Lookout, a Malgadon, because well that was possible. It was also just leading to way too much high roll and feels really bad whenever you triple into it. Last 6 drop before we move on to heroes was the Tide Raiser, was another neutral that on death rattle summon 3 random pirates, which is just so much RNG as well. Sometimes this could be multiple Eliza, sometimes it's a bunch of 1-drops, but most of the time this would lead to your opponent taking a lot of damage. When it comes to heroes, we had Bartenotron, which just reduced the cost of your tavern tier by 1. Kinda worse version of Omu, so as soon as Omu was introduced in the game, people stopped picking this hero, and I think the win rate was also really bad. They just decided to remove it altogether, and now it is actually a bartender that you can buy. I might just include Diablo because he is a hero that, you know, sometimes makes a reappearance in the game, but every 4 turns you face the entire lobby, and if you just beat a lot of people, you will gain a bunch of spells. Very toxic, very annoying. Please never return. Giant Finn is another old school hero that basically for 1 gold, it would give your minions a death rattle to summon a 1/1 Murloc. I think at one point it became a passive, I'm not sure, but this is just bad. So turning your minions into death rattle summon a Murloc, it doesn't do anything. We had Lady Vash, which whenever you upgraded Bob's Tavern, you would replace all of the cards with one from a tier higher. Also not great because it's only good to turn your level, and even then if you don't have a good shop, you don't even upgrade that many cards. Never saw too much play either. Nefarian had a 1-cost hero power that just dealt 1 damage to all enemy minions, so it was kind of just like a ghoul for 1 gold, which did see some play honestly in some metas because everyone was playing mech, so you would win at most end games, but other than that, a pretty bad hero. Professor Pritchard's side had a 1 gold hero power to give a friendly minion +10 attack until next turn. It used to be your leftmost minion got a certain amount of attack, then you could target it, which is kind of bad. You have to press this every turn to get the attack bonus. Sylvanas had a 0 gold hero power that would remove a minion from your board that you target and then give the adjacent minions +1/+1, which was really bad because if you use this hero power, you didn't get your 1 gold back instead of just selling the card. And then Tyrion, this used to be a 1 gold hero power as well, I think. It just gave all your neutral neutral minions on your board +1/+1. And this was too boring and too annoying because, well, remember Righteous Protector, you just had 2 of those, so you would skill up massive Divine Shield taunts, and you would just basically pick every neutral card you see, keep pressing your button, and you would be strong. And that was it. If you want to see a short guide on every single tribe in the game, be sure to click on the video on the middle of your screen right now. Thank you for watching.